Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever part of the world you're from. This is Kavita Ramchand from Life Success Coaching in Mauritius. So today we are talking about I'm still reading to you the book You Were Born Rich, and we are on chapter 8, The Razor's Edge. And I'm going to be continuing, so I hope that you pay attention because it's a very nice chapter. Now, he talks here about one of the most powerful illustrations of the fine line which separates winning from losing was revealed in the filming of the movie The Razor's Edge. The cast for the movie was comprised of 8 principal actors and 8 stand ins. That is to say, each principal had a stand in to do the hard work. Yeah, to do the hard work. To do the hard, grueling, and tiresome work for him, while the stars did the rest. After the film had been completed, Life magazine published a story in which the pictures of the 8 principals were exhibited on one page and the 8 stand ins were shown on the opposite page. The stand in for the star of the film, Tyrone Power, was a man by the name Thomas Noonan. Noonan was a close associate of Powers, and they had even attended the same high school at the same time. Both men were about the same size, they were equal in intelligence, they dressed almost identically, and they resembled one another very closely, even in their physical appearance. Well, the stand-ins usually they have to choose somebody who resembles the actor the maximum. But in this case, the stand-in was also in the same school, went had the same intelligence, everything, right? In point of fact, as close a resemblance as was humanly possible existed between each principal actor and his or her stand-in. But in one way, and one way only. Pay attention to this. The principal actors and their stand-ins were completely dissimilar. For the combined salaries received by the 8 principals for the picture amounted to what was at that time a staggering $489,000. The combined salaries for the 8 stand ins, on the other hand, amounted to a paltry $6,534. The principals may only have been slightly more talented than their understudies were, but the monetary compensation which they received was 75 times greater. As your awareness becomes increasingly great with respect to the razor's edge concept, you will be astounded by the number of such examples you encounter every day. As a case in point, just consider how much kindlier you feel towards a particular retail store where the cashier smiles and thanks you for your business and then asks you to come back real soon, as compared to one where you are greeted with a stern, well, are you going to buy anything or not attitude, right? So I'm going to stop here today because that's where I stopped in the other version. And we're going to talk a little about this. I myself am an owner of retail shops in Mauritius, which I run with my husband. Now I've become a life coach, so it's like my staff is running it. And there's one thing that I have always believed in, and this is something I must thank my mother for, because she always put it in my head, drilled it in my head, that in life, you always want to make sure that you are very kind to everybody else and you never hurt anybody's feelings. And because she put that in my mind, I'm grateful for that. Actually, she didn't really put it in my mind because she herself was the role model of what she spoke. So I automatically, it came into us to be like that, kind to people. For me, it was a little, put a little more in specific terms because I remember one day I asked my mother this question because I was always trying to find out who is God. That was my perpetual question ever since I was a child, because I could not grasp this concept of having so many different gods in our Hindu culture. And then you hear people say there is only one God. That wasn't Isn't that confusing? Think of a child who comes and you're telling him that yes, these are all the gods and the goddesses, but there is only one God. Does it make sense? I was like, it doesn't make sense. Now, the funny thing that happened was one time I asked my mom this question that do I need to pray? Because I don't seem to understand prayer. You don't pray. She never I never saw her going to the altar to pray. So I said, you don't pray, and still you're very confident and strong, and you're so kind. But my dad used to pray, but he was somebody who used to shout a lot. So I was confused. As the firstborn to these two parents, I was confused. So when I asked her that question, she said, even if you don't pray, it's okay. But always be kind to everyone and never hurt anybody's feelings. So that was ingrained in my mind since childhood. And I still remember, because I was daddy's girl, I always used to do what my dad was doing. So I did go to the altar one day by myself, and I looked at all the gods and the goddesses over there, and I said, you know what? My mother said, I was 7 years old. I said, my mother said that I'm not supposed to hurt anybody's feelings. So I don't know who to call. Because if I call one, the other person might get upset and I'm going to be hurting their feelings. So I'm going to just call all of you as one name, and that's going to just be God. And believe it or not, that day I felt some deep sense of connection with the higher power. It was like I just closed my eyes and I just felt a connection. I couldn't explain it, but it felt good. And from that day on, God became my confidant, like I would talk to God every day and share my little things with God. It was always like he was my best friend. That kind of, but that's not something I would share with people because it was not something you talked about really with friends and all. But that was my personal relationship with the higher power. And today I'm so glad that I'm a coach, because I see that everything that happened in my life from childhood was actually leading for me to become a coach, a life transformation coach, because it came to a point where God became my biggest enemy. When my brother passed away, I fought and I wanted answers. And when the answers came, I knew I had to teach this to the world, because most of us have not really understood the concept of the higher power, and how we are we are connected to it, and how we are co-creating our own lives thanks to the thoughts we entertain in our mind. So when my mind had great thoughts, happy thoughts, my life was beautiful. But when my mind turned negative with all the negative thoughts, my life became negative. And when I invested in a coach who helped me understand how my mind works and I took back control over it, that was like the happiest day of my life. And it was so transformational that I needed to just go and share this with the world. I knew that day I found my life's purpose. So I am currently doing a 5 days challenge. And if this resonates with you and you have been a seeker of the truth all your life, then you may want to join me on this challenge. We are on day 3. There are 2 more days, but the replays are going to be there for another week. So I'm going to put a link under this video and feel free to join. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you on Tuesday. Bye bye.